Welcome to the Parkinson's Project podcast. The Parkinson's Project seeks to erase the stigma associated with Parkinson's disease while empowering and inspiring those dealing with the affliction to live life to the fullest. The Parkinson's Project aspires to build an engaged, supportive community while examining the journey of living with Parkinson's disease through a positive, empowering perspective. Here is your host of the Parkinson's Project podcast, Tim McNiff.
Hello, everybody. I am Tim McNiff, and welcome to the Parkinson's Project podcast. You know, they say everybody's experience with Parkinson's disease is different. What I'm learning is that there are commonalities too. The beauty is in hearing the stories from Parkinsonians themselves, because then you can glean those things that you want to take from them and apply to your own life, your own situation, whether you have PD or not. Jason Kopacz doesn't strike me as a guy who ever looked forward to talking a whole lot about himself. But Jason, who in full disclosure is associated with the Parkinson's Project, has agreed to sit down and share his story in the hope that it'll help someone else who is coming to terms with their own PD diagnosis, or perhaps is looking for a little inspiration along the way on their journey. And so it is with that I would like to welcome Jason Kopacz to the Parkinson's Project. Jason, how you doing?
I'm good, Tim. Thanks for the great introduction. It's hard to talk about yourself. For me, it's hard to talk about yourself, or oneself. But I've learned in the last 7 years since my diagnosis that we can't hide behind the diagnosis. We have to get out in public and fight this thing in a team fashion. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to walk through my history and what I'm doing to make my life better for people with PD, or to live well with PD, and then move forward to help other people as well.
Well, Jason, if you were really excited about sitting here and talking about yourself, you know, then we're talking about a whole nother affliction. So remember that what we're doing here today is, like you said, the hope that somebody else is going to get something out of this. And I'm taking you down. Jason and I we've been on some Zooms together. We've been on some phone calls together. We've never met in person. And I'm just getting familiar with this story. So he's going to be patient with me, and hopefully you'll get something from this, because we're going to go through the whole thing. And I'd like to take you back, for better or worse, to 2017. And you find out in a diagnosis that you have Parkinson's disease. But this wasn't the first time that you had come into contact with Parkinson's. You were only all too well familiar with it, weren't you?
Yeah. So my diagnosis was actually in 2014.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So no problem. 2017 is when my wife and I started our foundation, but to help others. But in 2014, when I just started at Polaris, and I went in for my physical, and I thought I had tennis elbow, and on my left side was a little stiff, a little sore. I thought, I'm working out a little bit, golfing a little bit, and getting old. You know, I mean, 36 years old. I was getting pretty old. But so at the time, I noticed I had a little tremor occasionally in my left pinky, and didn't really think twice about it. You know, maybe once every couple months. And when I went to my physical, the doctor said, something's not right. You better go see a neurologist. And I went through the whole process with a neurologist, and within 10 minutes, she was like, more than likely you have Parkinson's disease. So here's what you got to do. She gave me a whole list of stuff. And, you know, my mind went right back to my grandma, who had Parkinson's really bad. She was diagnosed about the time I was born, in 77, 78, something like that. I think she was diagnosed. And they didn't know a lot about Parkinson's back then, but we watched her fight the battle and go through the tremors and go through the dyskinesias and go through all the stuff that I'm trying to fight against right now. And we watched her eventually just kind of fade away. And it was tough on the family, but it took 30 years for her to finally give into this disease. And then lo and behold, it pops up in a diagnosis for me. So unfortunately, my family's well used to having a Parkinson's diagnosis in our family.
I'm sorry about that too. Yeah. So let's take you back again to that day. So you hear those words. Can you remember what's happening in your mind as you're hearing that?
I think I just laughed at the doctor, because, my wife at the time we had 4 kids under the age of, or we had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and two twins that just turned 1. So,
oh my gosh.
My wife and I were joking that that night I was carrying 2 car seats everywhere I went. So we never saw my arms not moving, or we never saw anything not moving, because I always had something in both hands because I had twins. And the first thing that came to my mind is, what am I going to do now? Like, am I going to be able to drive in 5 years? Am I going to play baseball with my kids in 5 years? I mean, I had my whole future planned out, retiring, watching my kids playing baseball and sports and athletics, and get them dance with my daughter at the wedding and all stuff. And all these things just kind of flood through your mind at the time of those words coming out. But when I'm I'm a very practical person, and I like to sit and think about stuff and try to figure out what my next moves are. And basically, I got in my car, went to work, and didn't really talk about it. I texted my wife and talked to her for a little bit on the way to my job and at Polaris, but just kind of got to it and got back to my daily routine. And my wife took a little different approach. That's when she works at the University of Minnesota Hospital, so she called Dr. Tewitt's office and got me in within a couple of days to confirm the diagnosis. And I think you're planning on bringing Dr. Tewitt into this conversation in the next couple of episodes, but he kind of took me through the gamut. It's either MS, ALS, Parkinson's, cancer, and eventually it just kind of came down to what's the best thing I could walk out of here with. I knew I wasn't walking out without a life-changing diagnosis, but Parkinson seemed to be the easiest road that I could come out with. So.
Yeah, you beat me to that one, because that was what I was going to say next, because that really struck me. I was on your Team Kopacz Foundation website and was reading about you and your situation, and Dr. Tewitt said to you, when you're talking about your brain and the way this thing seemed to be manifesting itself, that maybe it was the best option. Mm-hmm. Was having that. How much was it still too big for it to say it actually helped you, or did it help you to have it put in those terms?
No, I think being a very practical person and just trying to kind of work through kind of what the next steps are is, I looked at my wife and Christy and said, maybe a brain tumor is not a bad thing, and she looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, well, ALS, we all know the struggle that ALS diagnosis comes up with. MS, I had no idea what that meant. And then Parkinson's, obviously I knew that, and then my aunt also died of a brain tumor. So obviously that's not an ideal situation to be in either, but it kind of puts in perspective when you're 36 years old and you walk in the doctor's office and you're coming out with some sort of neurological diagnosis. But, we got home that night and we looked at the Michael J. Fox website. We looked at the University of Minnesota website, and there's a whole other set of treatment that has come out in the last 30 years since my grandmother got diagnosed. And we just knew that it was time to get moving and start exercising. So that's what we did, and that's what we've been doing ever since.
I was going to ask you about that, because you're diagnosed with PD. You've seen it. You're learning about it, but you're 36 years old. It had to be a couple minutes of, this isn't fair, or why me? I mean, did you ever allow yourself to get caught up in that?
Not really. I knew I had to stay strong for my family and my wife and my parents. And, I'm not trying to stay strong for the fact that trying to put on a show or anything. It's just, for me, it's just, I don't like the pity party, I guess, when it comes down to it. And I know that I've got dreams and aspirations that still need to be taken care of. And that's what I want to do with my life, is just look forward. I've never said, why me on this road? Does it suck? Absolutely. It's horrible. I mean, there's days that you don't want to get out of bed, and going through the surgery I went through this year of 20 hours laying on the bed, awake on a table, while they're putting the stimulators in your brain and hooking that up. That's not any fun, but I'll tell you what, it's worth the ride. You got to just live every life to its fullest.
You are talking about something that we are going to get to in time, but I want to stay with this for a moment. You mentioned exercise a moment ago, and I'm assuming this is Dr. Tuitt again. You said more than once on your website, exercise is the only countermeasure to slow the progression of Parkinson's disease. Is that something that came from Dr. Tuitt, or something that you just come to know through experience, or a little bit of both?
It started with Dr. Tuitt, obviously. He basically, on that first appointment, after about 6 or 7 hours of different scans, and we sat down at about lunchtime, and we were both hungry and tired. And he said, the only thing that we know that will help you in this situation is to start exercising. So my wife and I got in the car and decided we're going to get Fitbits, and we had an elliptical at home that we hadn't used in a long time. So we decided that night that I'm going to do 30 minutes, and within 3 or 4 weeks, I was up to an hour, and then 3 or 4 weeks after that, I was up to 90 minutes, and then I decided to do some kickboxing and all that kind of stuff. So it all was spurred on by the conversation that Dr. Tuitt basically said, he's got to live an active lifestyle, and we move forward with that. So exercise is key. And then, as you meet people with Parkinson's, everybody's, like you mentioned in the introduction, everybody's kind of got a different story, but the one tangible commonality is that the higher you get your heart rate for the longer you get it, the better you're going to feel with PD. So it's proven with kickboxing, it's proven with running, it's proven with HIIT exercises, all that kind of stuff, dancing, Tai Chi, all that kind of stuff. Anything you can do to get your heart rate up is a common thread between all the different exercises.
There are worse things than being told that exercise is the best therapy for PD. But you, at the time of your diagnosis, you had said you had twins and you had 2 other kids under the age of 5. So I'm guessing you weren't spending a lot of time working out at that time. What sort of physical condition were you in at the time of your diagnosis?
Not very good, honestly. I think I was about 290 pounds and
Wow.
Wore size 42, 44 jeans, something like that. I had a desk job that I wasn't too mobile on. And my wife and I actually just 3 or 4 years earlier than that, just got back from an international assignment in Bologna, Italy. That was probably the most exercise I had for about 5 years prior to that too. As at Caterpillar, I was walking around Bologna getting our pizza at night. But honestly, I got done with football when I was 18. My knees were sore, and I kind of lived the college lifestyle, and I kind of lived that for the first years of our marriage too. So it wasn't really a lot of exercise at all in my daily routine, if you will.
Gotcha. From your website and from your charitable giving, it seems as if running has become your number one form of exercise. Is that accurate? And is that something you have just to kind of naturally come to, or is that is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so I never was a runner. It kind of came down as a challenge to myself of how far can I push myself. And, like I said, we got up to 90 minutes or so on the elliptical, and that was kind of getting a little boring and kind of stale. So I moved over to, I met my personal trainer, Mike Pantaleo at the time. And he told me the first meeting we had was, I know nothing about PD, but I can tell you that your heart rate will get up and you'll lose some weight really quick under my watch. So he said he was a wheelbarrow and a box of rocks kind of guy, and I knew he was the right trainer for me, because the gym exercise with all these contraptions and all these movements, it's just not for me. I like the curls, I like the push-ups, I like the up downs, I like running old school, yeah, the Rocky style training. So I think that's he kind of set me on the course, and he's also an old Ironman guy. So as soon as I started getting a little bit better shape, he started introducing me to a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. I ran my first 5K in October of 2016, I think. And then it's just progressed from there. I've run 2 marathons, about 6 or 8 half marathons. I've done a 4-day challenge where I ran 48.3 miles in 4 days at Disney in 2020. And
all since your diagnosis.
All since my diagnosis, yeah. I never ran more than a mile for football since I was 18. I think that was the last time I ran a mile, was right around my 18th birthday for football. But it really kind of comes down to just pushing myself and finding something that works, and running just kind of works for me.
And your advice to somebody else who's in there, it can be dance, it can be Tai Chi, it can be kickboxing. It's find your thing.
Yeah, it's all it is just find what makes your body feel good. I mean, that's ultimately, you're not going to stop the progression of Parkinson's with exercise. You're not going to eliminate it from your life. But what it does for me is it takes some of the stiffness and some of the balance work and all the kind of side effects that come with it, bowel movements. It all kind of makes your body flush out, and that's what you're looking for, is whatever you can do to make your body feel better is what you need to do. And you got to do something you like too. I mean, I'm spending 2-3 hours at a time now running in the mornings, and it's not my favorite thing to do, but I listen to podcasts and I do a lot of Audible books, and that's what makes it enjoyable for me.
So let's talk about and stay with exercise for a minute. You're on medication, right? How does that affect you in being medicated in exercising? I mean, like, I have enough time motivating myself just to go and do it, and I don't have that excuse.
Yeah. So I'm kind of in two different phases of my medication. One is prior to my surgery, I was on a lot of medication. I was moving a lot. I had a lot of dyskinesias, which, that's all the side effects that come with it. And I was taking a lot of medication, like every couple of hours I was taking a lot of pills, and I just couldn't. I could run. I could still run, but then when I'd sit down, I'd just kind of be bouncing around all over the place. And then I had surgery, and it's been
all right, you're a popular guy.
And then after surgery, the goal was to reduce some of the medications, and really what it comes down to is the stimulators actually help with all the dyskinesias, preventing. They kind of block your brain from allowing you to do all the side effects. I'm kind of a little bit jittery right now, but I think that's more nerves than anything. The one thing I've noticed with Parkinson's is if you're a little bit nervous, you get a little bit jittery. Just by nature. It's not necessarily the medication, but it's just a disease, right? And but now I'm on a pretty regimented medication structure where I take pills every couple of hours, and then like 1.5 pills every 2.5 hours, and that seems to get me through my day pretty good. And then at night, I don't take any more medication at night after 8 o'clock, and I can sleep through the night pretty good now post surgery. So that was probably the involuntary movements and sleeping were my biggest detriments before surgery.
Okay, and you mentioned surgery a couple of times, and we're coming. I want to stay with fitness one more time, because, like the rest of us, your fitness routine, which you've come to count on, right? All of a sudden, here's the pandemic. What did that do to you?
Well, luckily I like to run outside, so I could stay. Keep up with most of my running routine, but it was the lifting and the stretching and the kickboxing and all that kind of stuff kind of got put on hold. And my wife ended up buying us a Peloton, but it was 6 months out from when we can get delivered. So we got that in December. I think she ordered it in June. So we have a Peloton now at home, and that helps quite a bit. I get on that probably 2 or 3 times a week, depending on my schedule. And but yeah, once the pandemic hit, everything kind of locked down. You couldn't even get you couldn't buy weights from Dick's, or you couldn't get a jump rope from Amazon. Everything was on lockdown. So we got really creative. But the one thing I did notice is as I got more and more comfortable with working from home, the more and more comfortable I was sitting on the couch too. So it was kind of a double-edged sword where, in March of last year, I fell and broke my hand. I broke my wrist. I had a cast on for a month and a half. Then the pandemic hit, and then I couldn't rehab my wrist. I couldn't do anything last year because it was all virtually. So my wrist isn't still perfect, but it works fine. It's working better now, but it's ultimately it all hit at the same time last year, and it was a little bit more than I think it was a little bit, it hit me more harder than I thought it would in terms of mental toughness and getting back off the schneid, if you will, I guess.
I can't imagine. Like I said, all of us, we struggle with our, drive. And so just one more question along the lines of the physical part of it. So talk about getting off the schneid. Are you self-motivated? Have you always been sort of self-motivated, or what do you rely on, some sort of external source of motivation to exercise and get out there and get to do what you need to do?
I'm always been internally driven to be better than what I should be, if that makes any sense. I've always been the youngest one in my grade. When I graduated high school, I was the youngest kid in my class, and I was just barely 18 when I went to college, and I actually was driven enough where I could have graduated high school at 16 years old and went to college, but I didn't. I stayed and played football because I like the sports aspect of it. But I've always pushed myself to be the next level, whether it's football. I wasn't the best football player, but I was aggressive and I can get it done. And I got recruited by some small Division II schools to play, North Dakota State, University of North Dakota, a couple of those other schools to play up there. But ultimately, I've always wanted to be the one that pushes the envelope and push myself harder at work. And it comes from my parents. I mean, my mom and dad were both blue-collar workers, one for the Star Tribune, one for the Anoka Hennepin School District. They worked with their hands, and they always pushed themselves hard. And they taught me a work ethic. My dad worked on a farm until I was like 10 years old, as well as the Star Tribune. So there's a lot of dynamics behind it that I'm very proud to say that have paid off to pushing myself and pushing me harder, so I can push my kids to have that hard work ethic and continue to push through this disease. So
it is a great story. And ordinarily on the Parkinson's Project, we kind of keep these things to around 20 minutes or so, and we're there, and we've only really gotten about halfway through. So Jason, if you're okay, what I'd like to do is I'd like to split this up into 2 segments or 2 episodes. And so we'll call this at the end of episode 1, and then we'll resume with Jason Kopacz with episode 2 right after this.
Thank you for engaging with the Parkinson's Project podcast. Be sure to look for more content on the Parkinson's Project Facebook page, and we'll see you right here on the next edition of the Parkinson's Project podcast.